what's up, everybody? You are listening to Craig Perra. I'm the founder of the Mindful Habit Systems, and this is Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions, a podcast to help you create and sustain healthy sexuality and a great life. I'm so excited today. I've got two very, very special guests that I want to talk about, Geoff Laughton and Mark Johnson, both from the Undaunted Man. And we're going to talk about that. These are two brothers that I met at the Big Tent Summit in Loveland, Colorado. I've shared with you how powerful that was to have all of these men and women who support men under one umbrella. It was a really powerful connecting experience, and it got me to meet these two beautiful men, and I'd like to introduce them now. Hey, Mark. Hey, Geoff. Welcome.
Thank
Craig,
you.
good to be here.
All right, so let's do this. Instead of me butchering a bio that you've given me to read, we've been doing this enough. I would like you, Mark, and then Geoff, introduce yourselves to my audience. Let them know who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
I've been coaching people for close to 30 years now in various fields. I started out with at-risk kids back in the late. Started working with co-ed adults in the early 2000s, and for the 9 years now, along with we've been working exclusively in men's work and coaching men and running men.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Geoff, tell me about yourself, brother.
Well, I have been a relationship coach for 30 years, and I've been a men's coach and men's group leader for 25 now. And I got into men's work in my early days because I really didn't have men around me growing up. And so, to your question of why I do this and what I love about it is when I learned how amazing men could be, I just found I had a passion for supporting men in being the best version of themselves that they could be, and have been doing that for a long time, pretty much as a Lone Ranger. And then Mark popped into one of my men's groups, and we found out that we were twin sons from different mothers, and he thought that we could really create a pretty powerful community and company out of what we were doing with men. And so here we are, and the rest is history. And I'm also a husband, a father of a amazing man, and grandfather of a handful of man to be.
Wow, grandfather, that's going to be a little crazy. Well, welcome, guys. So glad that you're going to be here. And the way I was thinking is I'm going to toss these questions up in the air, and maybe Mark, you answer one, Geoff answer one. And I think some of the questions are going to require both of you to really get to the meat of it. So I want to first talk about, how did the Undaunted Man as a name come about, and what does being undaunted mean to you?
Undaunted became our name because we are. Ask the spicy questions right out of the gate, Craig.
That's it.
Because masculinity has been being demonized in the West since the 60s. That's the 1960s. I guess I have to say that now. Gosh, I'm old. And so many of the men that I've been working with since, well, geez, even as far back as 1999, and that Geoff and I work together with, are actually afraid to be masculine. They come into our groups and they're of their masculinity because they've been told that to be masculine is to be fundamentally broken or fundamentally wrong, and that the way to be a good man is to be as much like a woman as humanly. And so the cure, what we found, is to help men to become fearless, which is what undaunted means, and that is to be fearlessly themselves, not fearless according to our definition of what masculinity is, not fearless according to any vision that we have for them or for men in general, but fearless according to their inner voice, their inner leading, and their masculine nature, however that expresses itself.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that answer, because so many of us have been taught to hide, to suppress, to and we're supposed to like something, we're supposed to, be a certain way, and finding that your version of masculine authenticity, I think, is really important. Geoff, what do you want to add to that, if anything?
Well, and there's another definition of undaunted that says courageously resolute. In the climate that Mark was just talking about, you got to have balls to really, above and beyond the obvious. It takes courage and resolve to be a voice for the beauty and value of masculine energy. And we're also hugely advocates for the reality that every human being has masculine energy, every human being has feminine energy, and we need both of them. They are equally powerful, equally necessary. And we're very resolved around that mission that Mark just spoke. And that takes courage and it takes a real clarity of knowing who you are and what you stand for. So that really, Mark and I have done a lot of work individually and together to help ourselves keep walking that talk and that journey. And it only seemed natural to really have that be our name.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mark, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I want to, because Geoff and I have been doing this together for a long time. We both think of different things at different moments in the one of the experience, well, I want to say all, but I'm sure there's an exception. Nearly all of our men have experienced them being shut down. Like the expression of their masculine energy is actively discouraged, actively criticized from their youngest days in school. I mean, these days it happens but it happens in kindergarten, happens in first grade when, boys are being, that behavior is criticized, and it's masculine behavior is actively encouraged in, and rewarded. And it, the double standard that exists there needs to be corrected. And it's not about placing one above the other sex. It's treating everyone as equals and encouraging everyone to be the fullest and best version of themselves according to their natural instincts. And people that are born large portions of masculine energy is most deserve to be able to express that fully without being punished or criticized or suppressed or rejected.
And let's talk about some of that programming. How are we raised to suppress that masculine energy? And I'll put that out there to both of you guys.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I'm sure you can go back to your own experience in grade school and junior high and boys act out. When boys are aggressive, that gets shut down. When boys are assertive, that gets there's been I'm old enough to remember the conversations in the 70s about how we needed to encourage girls to be more assertive, and boys were told to sit down and shut up to allow the girls to. That message, back in the 70s and 80s was relatively primitive. Nowadays, it starts so young that when boys act out, they are told to sit down, be quiet, be good, be at the same time that girls are actively encouraged to protect. They're not told to sit down and be quiet so that the boys get a chance. The kids today are not treated equally, and boys especially are treated. They're expected to act like little girls.
Geoff, your experience or your thoughts. Thank you, Mark.
Well, I'm probably a bit of an outlier in that growing up, I had a single mom. So I was raised by my mom and her mom. And I had one sister, no brothers. Every dog we ever had growing up was female. So I had no fucking idea what it meant to be a guy, And I remember growing up on John Wayne movies and Bonanza, tells you how old I am, really admiring, God, even Roy Rogers, admiring cinematic or TV versions of men. And I didn't have any real home modeling of what that was going to look like, what would be, quote unquote, being a good man or being a quote unquote bad man. And my mom had the most horrific taste in men known on earth at that time, in my opinion. And so even the men that might have been around our household from time to time tended to be really, really weak men, addicts, and the like. I didn't really, my first examples of masculine energy tended to be bullies, boys that were bullies. And so I actually grew up feeling like, well, I think men are kind of fucked up. And that was just my direct microcosm experience. And then when I got into high school, and all my teachers were female, I didn't have a male teacher until I was in 6th grade. And when I think back on him, good guy, and he was married to a woman that was very masculine dominant. So he was kind of like a 1960s version of Robert Glover's No More Mr. Nice Guy. So I didn't really have anything to go by until high school. And I had a counselor in high school. Mr. Lemkuhl was his name. And he was the football coach. And, you look at me right now, do I just scream jock? No. But he was such a masculine guy that had a heart as big as he had powerful, strong, masculine energy. And he knew when it was time. I mean, you did not fuck with him. But when I would go into his office and be, a tearful mess because I'd get beaten up on the schoolyard, he didn't pamper me with feminine energy. He gave me his heart, but he also taught me how to be a boy and a young man. So that was really the beginning of it. And the rest came into place when I was in my early 40s. So I'm kind of a late bloomer to that answer.
And what happened in your early 40s, Geoff?
My wife and I have one child together, a boy. And when he was about 13 and a half, one of my best friends offered to work with him to get him ready for an initiation ceremony that was going to revolve around the material in Robert Moore's book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And he spent a year working with Mark, that's my son's name, and getting him ready for an all-day initiation experience that happened in southwestern Colorado. And he got to pick the men that were there, which included my dad, who had come back into my life in my late teens. And it was an amazing day. And at the end of it, I was so impressed with how this 13-year-old boy showed up and seeing what kind of man it looked like he was going to turn into, that I got I was half blowing snot to beat the band because I was so moved. And then I got pissed. It's like, well, shit, I didn't get this growing up. And so I had some guy friends in Durango, Colorado, where we lived then, who told me about the Mankind Project's New Warrior Training Adventure. And I had resisted that for years. And after that day with Mark and seeing how parts of me inside really needed that kind of blessing and that challenge from men. I went and did that weekend, and I've been in men's work ever since and just fell in love with men. Started getting what kind of man I am that in a lot of ways reminds me, and now that I'm looking at myself on the monitor, I kind of look like Mr. Lemcule now. How weird is that? So that that's really how it unfolded. And I just have been, I mean, it really has been a passion ever since.
It's interesting because it's polar opposite of Jeff's in so many ways, but we ended up in the same place at the same time because my very strong, very and he was masculine in the way that men get stereotyped, is no access to their emotions, no ability to connect at an emotional, and there are various reasons for that. But I would early, as a teenager, as a young man, and I was very put off by my father. I was intimidated by. I couldn't connect with him no matter how hard I. And so, like Jeff, but for different reasons, I bought into all of that. I mean, I grew up watching television shows where the husband was a bumbling idiot. I mean, we actually talked about this at the big. The husband is a bumbling moron, and the wife is very masculine and competent and keeps things together and keeps the dumb husband's problems. So I bought into all of that, that the way to be a successful man was to be more. I got to the year 2002, just about to turn 35. I was, fully bought into that model of that dysfunctional model of what it means to be a man, and that dysfunctional model of masculine. And in the space of a month, I lost my long-term, and I, 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 I curled up on the floor between the bed and I said, I don't know what. I surrendered, and a lot of things came out of that moment of surrender. There's a whole spiritual journey we could. But one of the things that came out of that is that I realized that I had been following all of the popular advice of what it means to be a man, which means that I was soft, I was weak, I was not I wasn't respected by, I wasn't, I was still a child in many ways, without knowing any of this. Obviously, this came to light after and it was recognizing that by going down that with my whole heart and my whole and all the ability and intellect that I had, it led me to a horrible that led to a search, which put me on the path that Jeff and I.
Yes, that led you to the Undaunted Man. So you guys work a lot with masculine and feminine energy dynamics, and it's so tricky. And I'll give you an example, is that so I felt that part of me connecting with my feminine side was a big part of my journey because of that, what was called toxic masculinity. And I'm always trying to use the right words here. And I realized that like that feeling is masculine, being vulnerable is masculine. So I guess help me maybe share an example of how these energies play out in coaching, maybe relationships or parenting, because you've talked about how that masculine and feminine presence both contribute to healthy fathering and leadership. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, the way I've come to practice it and deepen my own personal way of working with both of those energies is that my masculine energy, so I'll put it in terms of fatherhood, being the father of a son. A lot of what I needed to be able to teach him, I felt when he was growing up, definitely included being able to connect with emotion, being able to connect with the emotional heart, but also that created a level of empathy And to be able to make it in the world as a human being, not just as a male, but as a human being, you've got to be able to do at least a couple things. You have to be able to communicate well and connect with other people. That requires a high degree of empathy, and compassion has always been a huge part of my natural personality. Even as a little boy, very empathetic, very compassionate with people. So you've got to be able to feel people to help navigate how you're going to interact with them in any context. The other thing is you've got to be reliable. You have to be dependable. You got to be able to get shit done. And that ability in either a male or a female is at the center of masculine energy, the way I look at it. So to be able to really get good at both of those, I had to hold my son accountable, and neither my wife nor I were unduly softies. But I think like when Mark and I were growing up, the dads were often the disciplinarians and the moms were the nurturers. Well, there were times where it would be flipped with my wife and I, because she was also an elementary school teacher. So when you're a first grade teacher, you got to have some good, strong masculine and feminine energy, because those kids are going to run all over you. So she taught me a lot about bringing more of that male masculine flavor, I guess, for lack of a better word back then. So I taught my son how to be respectful to women, to girls, how to be respectful, period. That to me that crosses both energies. Both contribute to that. And then when he would be hurting and when he was getting old enough to want to date and, how do I be with girls? I taught him a lot of the more traditional masculine values of respecting girls, consent, things like that. I also, to be honest, I taught him a lot, and he had this natural ability, to be fair, but I think I helped him refine how to listen from both his masculine logic, masculine clarity, and how to also listen with empathy and empathize and learn when you need to bring masculine energy to a situation and when feminine energy is going to be the better energy for the task at hand. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I guess I would say that it's a popular notion, profoundly, that weakness is not related to a biological sex or
Agreed.
masculine. I mean, weak men are not feminine men, and more effeminate men are not. But there are very profound differences between the masculine and feminine, and each individual person has the fundamental nature that they are in tune with naturally and instinctively. The overwhelming majority of people that are in tune with masculine energy are male, biological males, and the overwhelming number of people that are in tune with feminine energy are female. There is a spectrum. It exists on us, and just because are it primarily in tune, like for me, I'm primarily in tune with masculine. One of like I would be ineffective in all of my jobs if I didn't have the ability to access my feminine when that's what was. I mean, a lot in my work, it is necessary for me, to set the tone, to set the direction, to hold people accountable, to have, and sometimes I have to help people along. I have to. the attempted erasure of the differences between masculine and feminine energy is also real. Familiar you are with polarity?
No.
Polarity theory, that in my opinion, and I think mostly in Geoff's opinion as well, polarity theory kind of encaps the challenges in the dating market these days, because as women have been encouraged to be more masculine and men have been encouraged to be more feminine, that we become more like the attractions. I mean, if you hear about
Mm-mm.
the younger generation having less sex than today than in the they're dating less than at any point ever in recorded Western, and there's a lack of interest. Populations in the West and in the affluent countries are shrinking. We're on the verge of population collapse because people are more interested in kind of doing their own. There's a lot of reasons for that that go beyond polarity theory, but one of the problems, men aren't really that attractive to women, and vice versa. I mean, I know I'm not to masculine. I'm not. I mean, there's nothing wrong with men that are, and there's nothing wrong with. This is not a commentary on homosexuality. Or I'm attracted to fem. My partner is attracted to masculine. Nothing enrages my partner than when I'm too much in my because I become nothing enrages
Interesting.
me more than when she's in her masculine, because I don't want to be in a relationship.
Interesting. Polarity. I'm gonna have to check that out.
I strongly recommend a deep dive on polarity theory. It starts to answer a lot of the questions that get raised by really brilliant, intelligent people like Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. The solution to everything in No More Mr. Nice Guy is polarity. It solves all.
Interesting. Well, good. I've added that to my list. But here's what I want to ask you this. So, Mark, I think it was you, or you either coined or popularized a compelling phrase, feel the fear and do it anyway. How do you build that capacity for courageous action in your clients, especially in the face of that initial resistance that we all, reach out for help for? Tell me a little bit about that. I like that quote.
Well, I will tell you, the short way to describe it is I do my best to emulate Geoff's high school, which is you hold people, you hold high expectations, and you hold those expectations and that accountability. That's how.
Mm.
I mean, I give very clear advice, very clear steps according to the goals that they have. But the way of being that, very clear accountability, very clear reliability. They know that they can count on me. I operate as their rock sometimes, depending on the man, but I am that guy that's there, that's holding the standard high for them. But I don't do it by belittling or by criticizing or by being, kind of an old school football coach stereotype kind of thing where you're, calling people names. High expect that's I don't know how to say it any better to say it than that. I had a baseball coach when I was a kid, Mr. And he I was a terrible baseball player. That's just not something I was ever very. And he asked me to do something one time. He asked me to attempt a bunt on a third strike, which is an automatic. And so I said, "Why did you?" I was so upset. I was crying. I was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. I was crying. He goes, I said, "Why did you tell me to do that? I thought you could." And that was the most crushing thing he could have said to me, and also the best thing he could have said to me, because it motivated me so much because he had faith. He
Yes.
had the faith that I could do it. And the fact that I failed to do it wasn't he held me capable, and he said, "It's all right next time." That's the whole process in a nutshell. But to be able to hold that space, key. And
So
there's a
important.
lot of people, like I told and yesterday, a friend of ours actually, Joe, that was talking about starting his own journey to become a coach. I said, a monkey can learn coach. The techniques are not that difficult. It's who you are, and what you bring, how you're able to person without an own.
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to add one other thing
Please.
that Mark left out that is so crucial to answering your question. Everything he said is spot on. And the other thing is if you let fear run you, then you are literally a slave your entire life. Because we all have fear. It isn't about being literally fearless. If we didn't have the capacity for fear, probably the population would have thinned out a hell of a lot longer ago. But the way to forge an incredibly strong human, but particularly a strong man in the best sense of that word, is you have got to do hard things.
So true.
A man who is not being challenged will be weak.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that. That makes, yeah, yeah. Well, and there's community it seems central to you guys. And how does your um why is the group experience so powerful for the men you coach, and why is community so important to you?
Well, speaking for me, community, and this undoubtedly comes partially out of growing up very isolated and, very excluded a lot because of ways I was different from the rest of the boys I grew up with. But the thing is, why I think community is so powerful, why the New Warrior Training Adventure changed my life forever. Most of us aren't, at least I'll speak for my generation. If you're a dude, you're supposed to have all the answers. If you don't, then bullshit people to believe that you do and try and figure them out, but don't let anybody know you're trying to figure it out. And I have believed for years that one of the reasons why the male suicide rate is so significantly higher than the female suicide rate is because we are not wired to be lone rangers. We are wired for connection. We are wired to look people in the eye and to love and to touch and to fuck and all those things. Anyone in isolation, and this was true for me for years, we're
Mhm.
listening to the hall and looking in the hall of mirrors in between our ears, and the value of a men's circle or group and a men's community, and similarly with different, reasons for a women's community, because I'm a big fan of women's groups for women, is if you don't have other people to talk with and be heard by and to hear that all share a common cause of wanting to be the best version of themselves that they can be, then the human ego will lie through its teeth 24/7. So the reflection on top of the support, having your brothers have your back when your life is literally disintegrating around you. I don't know that I'd still be alive if I didn't have that when I really needed it.
So true. Mark, I know community is important to you. I need your thoughts on that as well. Thank you, Jeff. That was so powerful. And I think all of us have been there, which is why we're here in this micro community.
Hmm. Absolutely. So we are the average of the 5 people that we spend time with. That is it's a truism, and what could possibly be more valuable than a community of people that are committed to becoming the very versions of themselves that they can be according to the visions. If you want to be successful in business, go hang out with business people. If you want to be successful in relationships, go hang out with people that are actively working to be successful. That's what our group. We have men that have been in our group.
Yeah, me too.
That predate the Undaunted Man becoming Undaunted Man, because the value of the community, the value is hanging around with people that are committed to becoming. And we have groups that, and tend to naturally congregate. Groups tend to coalesce around themes we found over the years. We have groups that have coalesced around more spiritual themes, groups that have coalesced around career themes, groups that have coalesced around ship themes, and they start there, and men grow and they create the relationship or the career or the spiritual path that they want, and then sometimes they'll move into another group that's focused in a new area. Sometimes that group by itself will evolve. If they've
Yes.
solved all their relationship problems, then they evolve more into a career theme or into or more spiritually oriented theme. But it's that power of being people that are on a similar, specifically the trajectory that you want to be on, because we are going to either rise to the level of the 5 people we spend the most time with, or we're going to fall to the level of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And in haunted groups,
Love it. Love it. Love it. Geoff, I see you nodding your head. I didn't want to deny you of an opportunity to jump on that. Good.
Yeah,
Good, 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 good. Okay, go.
yeah. I don't disagree with anything Mark said, and it just made me think of another old expression, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
And we're better together than we are trying to just do it all on our own.
Here, here. We need each other. In my world, a quote that's resonates is the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. And that, those are words that I absolutely live by. Yeah, it's Jonathan Harris said it in his famous TED Talk, Everything I Know About Addiction is Wrong, just to give credit where credit is due. And so Geoff and Mark, if someone is interested in exploring your programs or just want to connect, now guys, we're going to put everything in the show notes below, but I want them to say it here, at least the primary place that you want people to go if they want to learn more about you and the Undaunted Man.
Sure. TheUndauntedMan.com is a great home base and does a beautiful job, if we say so ourselves, of laying out what we're about, what our philosophical stand is, and everything that we're making available. And also for those that are younger than us that hang out on social media a lot, our
nope, we don't anymore.
so is it just The
And,
Undaunted Man?
and I'll put the link
Great.
down below. I'll put the link down
Yep.
below so you don't have to worry about spelling that out. And so, what is one message I'd like each of you to send to someone listening right now who feels stuck or hesitant to step in their power? Let's wrap this up as one piece of advice you want to share with my listeners.
Have the courage to be you and dedicate your life to being you, because no one's going to do it for you and no one else can replace you.
And no one's coming to save you.
Coming to say,
Fuck no.
and I would just say, yeah, and I would.
Yeah. And they are, guys. Only good people on this podcast. Geoff and Mark, thank you so much for being here. Can't wait to do it again. Please check out the show notes in the description for all the social media, the website, and everything else that you need to access these guys. Mark and Geoff, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
having
much for
us.
having us.
All right. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, everybody. That wraps up another episode of Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. Remember, life is too short to suck. Embrace your power of choice. Feed the right wolf inside you and get the support you need. You do not have to do it alone. Thanks for watching.